Good afternoon, punters. Thanks for joining us. As ever, I'm joined by my trusty sidekick, Norton. Good afternoon, Jake.
As ever, Tags, it's a pleasure to be here.
It is terrific to be here.
I wish I had a nickname prepared for you off the top of my head. Unfortunately, I don't.
We just spoke about it, and I thought you might have wanted to give us some kind of operatic welcome.
Well, I was going to weave it in somewhere else.
Clever.
We'll get to that later.
The Bulldogs versus Sydney in the first of the semi-finals on Friday night at the MCG. The Bulldogs were absolutely humbled last weekend by the Hawks. And despite that, they're going to start favourites. They're around $1.78 to beat the Swans, who are $2.28 on the exchange. The punters don't like the Swans. They've drifted in the market. Jake, can you see the Dogs winning this one?
Yeah, there's been a fair move for the Dogs, or I suppose against the Swans. The Swans sort of evens out to about 220. And there's been one significant bet for the Dogs on Betfair that we know of. For that reason, I guess you've got to respect the punters' opinions and say the Dogs. I know we've discussed that sides that finish in the top four, lose in the first week, have a good record of bouncing back in the semi-finals. So that obviously goes in the Doggies' favour. But this is just a lottery. I mean, the Dogs are in such bad form, and the Swans weren't in great form until last week, and they only beat North Melbourne, but yeah, I don't know.
And they've beaten them pretty comfortably in the end. They get a few back that they didn't have against the Dogs the last time they played them in Canberra.
Yeah.
So yes, that theory has been upheld a number of times in the final series, but with the team going so badly, I can't look past the Swans here.
Yeah, I mean, I tipped the Swans last week, but then again, they were playing the Kangas, who are a joke. So I just don't know. I'm going to support the punters here and go with the Bulldogs, but with not a great deal of conviction, Tags.
I'd like to see them win, but I don't think they will. It's $1.79, the Bulldogs, $2.28, the Swans. We go to Saturday night, and the Saints versus the Pies at the MCG. Collingwood impressive last week against Adelaide, and the Saints were just absolutely thrashed by the Cats at the MCG on a pretty wet and wintry day, but they had a lot of people down.
Yep.
And again, I find it difficult to see them beating the Pies, who are in pretty good shape.
Yeah, they are. Collingwood, they're very good with their backs to the wall. They're a good, tough outfit, and they have, those few youngsters, 18, 19-year-olds who just could become dreamweavers for them. They get sort of 10 goals out of them, or did last week, and if they get the same service from those little dreamweavers, then hopefully it's going to be a successful weekend, Tags.
It could be, and dreamweavers at that age find it very hard to back up. But $1.81 the Pies, $2.18 the Saints to turn the tables. Collingwood have beaten them twice this year, and they beat them at the MCG the last time. Yeah, the Saints don't seem to play the MCG too well for some reason.
No, I agree. That they're a pretty difficult side to beat at the Dome. But guys like Stephen Milne, no disrespect to him, but he tends to go missing away from the Dome.
And in finals too, big games with a good pressure player around him.
Yeah, with all those things in mind, you'd probably just be leaning slightly towards the Dreamweavers in Collingwood.
All right, the Dreamweavers it is for Jake. $1.81 the Pies, $2.18 St Kilda. Geelong still really unchallenged at the top of the market. They're $1.39 to win the flag. Hawthorn $4.60. You can name your price about everything else. Collingwood the best of them at $40. The Brownlow, Ablett $2.58, Bartel $4.50, Harvey $5.60. We'll probably go into that in a bit more depth next week.
Yeah, we shall. I think Bartel's numbers stack up this year to last. I had a look at the votes from last year. I didn't realise he'd won by so far. 29 votes. And the next best was 22. Ablett polled 20. So, I mean, if Bartel, like I said, his stats stack up again this year. So I'd be inclined to have a little nibble at him.
He seemed to pinch a lot of the votes from Gazza when most opinion polls had sort of gone for Gazza and Bartel sort of flipped it on him, so
yeah, that's right.
Every chance to do it again.
Tags, just on the premiership market, I know you're a Cats man, so you're qualified to answer this question. How scared are you of Hawthorn?
Nervous, purely for the fact they've got a freakish forward who can do really anything on the day. But they also win their own ball, and I think that's the one thing that has troubled the Cats, is if a team zones off but is able to win their own ball and is able to have their fair share of possession. Yeah. Which the Hawks do well, and they don't turn the ball over. They don't butcher the ball like a lot of the other clubs.
They're a good side. They're both great sides, and for that reason, I think this weekend's matches are possibly irrelevant.
Perhaps. It's NRL's finals time, and we've got 4 matches this weekend. 1 plays 8, 2 plays 7, and so on in the NRL. You would favour most of the top 4 teams to get through here, perhaps with the exception of Sydney City.
Yeah, the Roosters got back on a winning note last week, and they're playing the Broncos, who are travelling reasonably, but also travelling on the road. So, like you said, you'd probably stick with the 4 home teams, and they're all, aside from the Roosters, fairly significant favourites.
They look to be pretty good things. We'll go through the odds and then perhaps if you want to give us a tip after each, Jake.
Sure.
Roosters $2.36 versus the Broncos $1.72.
This is the toughest one.
Yeah.
I think the Roosters, after getting on a winning note last week.
I'm going to go for the Roosters at home as well. The Sharks versus the Raiders. Sharks $1.42. The Raiders $3.35. I'm going to go for a bit of an upset here. Go for the Raiders.
I'm going to go for the Sharks.
Excellent. Manly and St George. Manly $1.48. St George $2.98.
Manly.
Manly for me too. Storm and the Warriors, $1.16 the Storm, $6.60 the Warriors. I can't see the Warriors troubling the Storm. The Storm are $1.89 to win the flag, Manly $5.80 and Brisbane $8.20. The rest are at double figures or beyond. Cronulla the next best at $13.50. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you again preliminary final week.